Well,
Oh,
we finally
geez.
made it.
That was, hang on. Okay. That was a little bit of a mess. Apparently my Zoom, I'm going to unplug this thing cuz it's whatever. My Zoom podcast microphone thing was like making a hissing sound and it was completely unusable. So I have this little microphone that I use when I travel, and that's what I'm using because I can't use my real microphone.
He's
The
just a
Zoom
little
is broken.
boy.
Yeah, I'm not like a real person kind of right now.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, truly, who
Yeah,
among us is a real person at all?
truly.
That's what I say. If AirPods Pro 3 would ever stay in my freaking ears, that would be great as well. I low-key every 2 seconds you gotta keep them in. God forbid you're ever eating a meal with AirPods Pro 3. Huh.
No, I feel that. I feel like
But
the twos
anyway,
fit me much better. Yeah, let's get into
yeah,
it. We'll do a shorter episode today because we're late, but we're still here. So we gotta
yeah.
get our attendance, get credit for being here.
For reference, for because everyone's like, oh, they're really late this time. Which, first of all, we're barely ever late. We're the most on time that anyone has ever been with regards to time. No one does time better than us. But today, what happened was the radical Zoom microphone recorder was not working.
Very
It
bad.
was very bad. They're terrible. They're not sending their best. It was just a little freak accident there with the Zoom where it just sounded like somebody left a faucet on in the background and we could not figure out how to make it stop. So now we're on the backup mic, and yeah, it took us quite a bit there to figure that one out. But we're back and we can just get started because we'll do a shorter episode, but we got some new chips. We got Vision Pro to talk about. There's some interesting things that
For
need to be
sure.
unpacked. So let's hop in, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome to Dark Mode, the podcast that brings you sage advice from two technology experts. Even though today we were flummoxed by a microphone. I'm your host, Luke Miani.
And I'm your host, Noah Rubin. On this show, we take questions from listeners, attempt to answer them to varying degrees of success, and maybe even have a laugh or two along the way, or a broken Zoom recorder or two along the way. Apparently, it's just why we're late, and that's why this will be maybe a slightly shorter episode, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll make it work. Now, obviously the main topic for today has got to be the new M5 chip. It's out in a MacBook, an iPad, and perplexingly Vision Pro, which I did not get. Like I just straight up refused to give Apple $3,500 for a chip swap in the Vision Pro when it is already not something that I find useful. So any improvements, and they do seem to be real, are things that I don't really care about.
Yeah, what I've heard is that it's like a very minor improvement. It's like not that noticeable. And I feel like I was talking to someone about this today and I was like, I guess a chip swap is great. Like, I'd take that over nothing, but like that's not going to fix any of the fundamental issues with Vision Pro. There's like so many other things that, and obviously like they're not going to address that in a mid-cycle refresh. Like the next one will be improved. But there was the one thing, which is the new, what's it called? Like the dual knit strap or whatever. There's the new strap that is supposed to be more comfortable. And that is a major issue with the Vision Pro. So I actually do wonder if that new strap helps at all.
Yeah, I kind of want to do a demo of it just to see if that makes a difference. But I feel like the only way that Vision Pro, I think, makes any amount of sense is with way higher quality pass-through cameras, way more field of view, because it's super tunnel vision right now. And it needs to be like half the weight and twice the battery. Like they need to change a lot. And that's, I don't know, it's kind of a shame because I feel like the M5 chip I thought would maybe do a little bit more, to be honest, because I mean, we'll get into the benchmarks and the comparisons, but my goodness, the M5 chip is significantly faster than the M4, which is significantly faster than the M3, which is itself pretty significantly faster than the M2. So you're gaining a ton of performance. There's a ray trace GPU that the Vision Pro didn't have before, and now it does. Why are we not doing something with that? It feels like, yes, it is an upgrade, but for 3 generations of Apple Silicon forward, I would have thought that maybe some new functionality would be unlocked beyond just like, hey, it renders pixels a bit better and it's faster and it's smoother. Like, yeah, Vision Pro's problems run very deep, and they're not fixing them. They're just not doing anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, in next year, 2 years, however long it's going to be, hopefully there will be like an actual update more than just a chip swap and a new band. So like hopefully they'll be moving that direction. But I do agree with you that like there wasn't they didn't really do anything to the Vision Pro as far as like the software and the features and capabilities and whatever. I don't know if like maybe there will be some software update in the future, or maybe like what's it called? Vision OS 27 will have something to take better advantage of it. I don't know, but I almost wonder if it really is just a limitation of the hardware, the other hardware, like the cameras and the sensors and whatever. Maybe even having that extra chip. It's like we talk about like the iPads. They're like, an M5 chip in an iPad is insane. Like that's way more than you really need in an iPad. And the Vision Pro doesn't seem like it would be the case, but I wonder if the other hardware is like holding it back, that it's like the cameras and the sensors are just not like good enough for the M5 to take full advantage. Maybe not. I mean, they were designed for an M2, so I could see it either way.
Yeah, no, it's just, it seems like I frankly wasn't expecting them to do anything to the Vision Pro at all until next year. So I'm happy in a way that they're giving it some attention, even if I don't think the attention really addresses the key issues with it. I will say though, I think the future for Vision OS is shaky because I feel like the biggest problem with it, and this is not going to be an easy solution, is that Apple doesn't have you would think, right, that if you were in Vision Pro, it would be like having your desktop, but freed of the borders of a desktop, right? You would think, okay, I'm staring right now at a 32-inch. I have two 32-inch monitors. And so when Vision Pro was announced, I was like, this could be game changing, because what if I could sit at my desk, just as I am now, but instead of these two rectangles, I could just have this free floating workspace with all of the same windows that I have, but not having to switch desktops as much. And, I could rearrange things. The problem that you run into is no matter what chip is in the Vision Pro, you can only realistically fit two applications in your peripheral view. And you have to move your head like that much to switch between them. The problem is, because you're limited in FOV, and then you're limited by the iris and the finger technology, you're never going to really be able to get anywhere close to the multitasking of even an M1. Honestly, I'll say it. The iPad Pro is better at multitasking than Vision OS. That's the problem.
Yeah, I feel like the other sort of facet of that for me is like the apps that run on the Vision Pro are not particularly, I don't know, powerful or like advanced or whatever. Like the apps that run natively on the Vision Pro, like you have all the built-in Apple apps and like I guess they work okay. But the thing that I would love to see, because then it's like, okay, you have these apps that are like, okay, and then you can do the screen thing where it like has your computer screen and it makes a big screen for you, but it's still just like having a big monitor. I think the really cool thing would be if instead of just having like a fake or like a digital monitor, if you could actually like pull the Mac applications and have them be sort of first class citizens, like actual Vision Pro Windows. And
Mm,
I'm thinking about, it was, I think, Parallels Desktop or VMware Fusion or something, where you would run Windows on your Mac, but it had a mode where it would, I don't know how they did this, but it would take, it would basically treat each Windows application like a Mac application. And so you could have like all these different applications that were actually Windows like running in your virtual machine in Windows, but they
mm.
looked like separate applications on the Mac, and they had their own separate windows that you could drag around and rearrange and whatever. I don't know how they managed to do that, but like if Apple could do something like that, where you could run, your computer's doing all the processing power, but all the windows, instead of just being on a virtual screen, if they were like Vision Pro Windows, so you could use the full power of the software and maybe a keyboard and a mouse and whatever, but
Hmm.
like fully take advantage of things. I think that would open up a lot for the multitasking, if they can get the field of view to be probably a bit better.
That gave me another idea because, like you mentioned, sometimes it's, just having these windows without having all the fluff around it might make sense. And that got me thinking. I personally find one of the most useful applications of Vision Pro is to extend your Mac screen, right? I think a lot of people that do actually regularly use Vision Pro, that's what they're doing. And now, you get that ultra wide, you can get like a really big screen. Sure, great idea. So, what if Apple were to what if they were to like totally trim the fat and do a super bare bones stripped down Vision Pro that is literally just a display extension? Because that is honestly something like legitimately think I would use that more than trying to fit the whole computer in the visor, right? Let's say, for example, you want to buy an M5 MacBook Pro, or the M5 Pro, the M5 Max, whatever it is. I've started bringing around a 14-inch because I think the 16-inch is too big. You've started carrying around a MacBook Air because I think a lot of people are kind of starting to say, I kind of want the smaller size, but obviously in doing that, I'm sacrificing on the screen. Final Cut Pro on a 14-inch MacBook Pro is a little bit tough, but I'm not, when I go to Australia, I'm not going to bring a 32-inch monitor with me. I would, however, bring a lightweight headset that let's say it has the screens and the pass-through cameras, all of that hardware for Vision Pro, but instead of an M5 chip, it was just like a super minimal, like even like an A19, right? Uh, very minimal, light, less cooling, less fan, less weight on your face. And the only thing that it did was mirror and extend your existing devices. Let's say $1,500. Honestly, maybe. Honestly, maybe. If it meant that I didn't have to carry around a super heavy 16-inch MacBook Pro, and even then, the screen is still, 16 inches. I would totally love to have like a little case, and I put that on, and boom, now I've got my dual 32-inch monitors right in front of me.
No, I agree, and I feel like the thing about the Vision Pro, like, yeah, if you could, let's say you had a Vision Pro that just ran off your computer, or it just extended your computer's display, whatever, you can still do pretty much everything that you could do on a Vision Pro on that device. Like you can still
Right.
watch the full screen movies. Maybe it's plugged in to your computer, or maybe it's some wireless thing. I don't know how it would work, but like you could still do that. You could still lie in your bed or sit on your couch or whatever and watch a movie. You can do the FaceTime thing, whatever. Like everything that you can do on the Vision Pro, you could do. I guess it would be, the main difference is that there wouldn't be anything like built in. It wouldn't, I guess, have Vision OS, or it'd have some basic version of Vision OS. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I kind of what I was saying before, that like Vision OS isn't even like that super useful. I feel like it would be more useful to, be able to just use your computer. So I agree with you. I think that would be a pretty compelling device.
It would be very interesting to see if they I don't know. We should move on from the topic of Vision OS because I want to talk about the
Yeah.
M5 chip. But I do think I feel like augmented reality does have a future, but it there's a long way I think to get where it needs to be for people to actually want to use it. Because I mean, I don't think any application of uh any sort of those AR, VR headsets, none of them have really gone mainstream. And the technology has now been out for 12, 13, 14 years. Um, and, they have their niches, they have their uses, but not in a broad way. I remember with like the Galaxy VR and the Google Cardboard and stuff like that, where everybody was trying to make VR phones a thing like 10 years ago. And that clearly didn't really catch on. I don't know, man. I think the only way to do it is it's got to be a pair of glasses that you put on and you see through completely normally and you see stuff anchored with 100% precision in the real world. I think that's the only way that it works. It needs to like use all those spatial sensors, use all the LiDAR and all that stuff to say, okay, here's a table. Let's, default, let's snap, Windows snapping tools, right? Get some snapping tools, snap it to a desk, snap it to a wall. Just I think it needs to fit the space more because right now Vision OS is basically just like random things placed randomly around you. And you can use apps that interact with the physical environment, but Vision OS doesn't really do that.
Yeah, I feel like part of the glasses is like, yeah, being able to. I think the whole thing is just like, as long as it's a pair of goggles that you put them on and it kind of separates you from the world, even though you have the pass through and you have the what's it called? Not the eyesight, but whatever the thing is called, where you see your eyes in the screen. Like they're like they have all that stuff, but you're putting on goggles and it's like whatever. The glasses need to, or what the glasses do is they allow you to still be, present, and it doesn't sort of shut you off in the same way. But I feel like the other thing about Vision Pro, I know we need to move on, but I'll just say the other thing about Vision Pro and Vision OS is like, I feel like this kind of stuff is more useful when it's sort of in the background or like in your periphery. So if you're like Vision OS and Vision Pro is basically like, imagine your computer, but like your computer's inside of like a pair of glasses or a pair of goggles or whatever. And I'm like, I guess I kind of get that, but I feel like the glasses would almost be more useful closer to being like an Apple Watch, in the way that like you're walking around somewhere and you have your directions in your peripheral vision. It's telling you where to go next. Or you get a notification, you get a message, and it shows up in your peripheral vision, and like all those things. I see the glasses as being more of an accessory or like an Apple Watch kind of thing. Not that they can't also do the productivity stuff, but I think that they're most useful in your everyday life when it is that like peripheral stuff. And the Vision Pro and Vision OS don't do that, because that's not how the Vision Pro is designed. And I think that that's part of the reason we say, oh, I don't know what to do with the Vision Pro. There's not enough things to do with it. I feel like the point of this AR stuff is not really necessarily to do stuff with it. It's more to just like make the things that you do a little bit easier and like more seamless. That's kind of how I see it.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that's probably one of the selling points that's been a little bit tough, is like, what do you do with it? Well, you kind of do everything that you already do, but for $3,500, I could get a hell of a nice MacBook and a display for it, and that would probably do what I do in a way that I already know how to do it in. And I think that's where, look, I don't like to pull out the Steve Jobs card. But in this case, this is a Steve Jobs, Steve would not have done something like this, because every single product, there were some good ones, there were some stinkers, things went well, things didn't go well. But at the end of the day, the top priority, the thing that Steve knew the best, was would a user be able to use this? And he would very immediately be able to look at a product and be like, well, that's dumb. Why would somebody do that? Why, like, he would ask those tough questions because I don't know, I feel like he had a really interesting perspective as a tech CEO who wasn't an engineer and was more of like, honestly, more of a consumer, you know? He was, I mean, a visionary or whatever, everybody knows that, but like the reason he was because he was more of a user than he was a, you know, tech creator. He would see the technology and say, I know what I can do with that. And I feel like with Vision Pro, that is what's missing. It's that little special touch that goes, I see I see the ingredients, I see the puzzle pieces, and I can assemble them into something that people actually would want to use.
Yeah, and I was gonna say we've talked before about products like the original MacBook Air that were like a little bit rough when they started, but you could still see the vision. And I feel like
exactly
Vision Pro, maybe not.
Not the Vision.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because I mean, like you mentioned, the MacBook Air. I was about to segue us back into the MacBook because that's where I think, I think Steve Jobs would be thrilled, frankly, with the state of the Mac right now. I think the whole using Apple native silicon would have been right up his alley. Would have loved that shit, especially considering that Steve Jobs only just barely saw the introduction of Apple Silicon with the A4 in the iPad and the iPhone 4. It's like right before his death is when the Apple Silicon train sort of started leaving the station. And my goodness, they're chugging. They turned that steam locomotive into a bullet train in 15 years. It's crazy. I think he probably would have wanted the laptops to be a little bit thinner, would be my guess. But apart from that, the foundations of Apple Silicon are really solid. And the way that they're able to keep advancing it this quickly is pretty crazy. It is absolutely nuts that we are looking at, a 40 to 45% GPU improvement in 1 year. And that's over the M4, which was also a big improvement. And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting the M4 to be this big of an improvement over the M3. And the M3 had ray tracing and a whole bunch of stuff. So like the fact that we've had these 3 Apple Silicon chips in a row that have just been absolute bangers, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely impressive. And like for me, I'm still on my M1 Max, my M1 Max MacBook Pro that I bought when it came out. But like knowing that the M5 is more powerful than the M1 Max, right? Or it's like right around there or something. Yeah. It's more powerful.
I think it's going to be very significantly more powerful too. Not even like a little bit.
That's honestly crazy that like this was the top of the line. I mean, it was the very beginning of Apple. Well, it wasn't the very beginning of Apple Silicon because we got the M1
It's only 4 years.
It hasn't been that long, and this was like the top of the line chip. And it's still a great computer. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't have any complaints about it 4 years later. But like just to know that the base chip that's like in an iPad and like the base model MacBook Pro is like more powerful than this one, and this like highly spec'd out MacBook Pro is pretty crazy. And it honestly makes me pretty happy because I've been thinking for a long time about getting a MacBook Air. And so when they bring the M5 to the MacBook Air, I honestly might do it. And it, the performance wouldn't even really be an issue at that point. So it's great.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, my benchmarking I tested with the M1 Pro, but the CPU in the M1 Pro and Max is the same. The only difference is the GPU. And in fact, if I pull up here, let me pull up the charts because I can kind of give you a rough estimate of how I think the M1 Max would do. Again, I don't have one to compare. But like, for example, in Final Cut Pro, from what I remember, and people might correct me on this, when I originally tested the M1 Pro and Max, in Final Cut Pro, in video editing stuff, they were the same. Like you didn't really gain a whole lot from going to the Max chip. So if that's the case, the Final Cut Pro 30-minute 4K ProRes export, so it's a pretty beefy file, on the M1 Pro takes 18 minutes 33 seconds. On the M4 Pro, still current newest chip, 15 minutes 30 seconds. The M5, 13 minutes 42.
Wow.
So the M5 chip is actually faster in video editing tasks than the M4 Pro. And keep in mind, the M4 Pro was this huge upgrade because they added way more cores and it's way better balanced than the M3 Pro. So that one wasn't necessarily because the chip was so much more powerful. It was just, they kind of tiered the pros up a little bit, so to speak. But isn't that crazy? It's 5 minutes faster than the M1 Pro and Max.
I mean, that is obviously very impressive, especially, again, the base model chip that's like going in the most basic, consumer products that Apple makes. It is really impressive. It feels like they haven't slowed down because we've heard rumors that like, I think the year that they do the redesign, the hardware like refresh might be a slower year for Apple Silicon. But like we were potentially thinking that would be this year, and clearly it's not this year for both in that there's no hardware refresh, but also the chip still hasn't slowed down, or the pace of improvement hasn't slowed down. So maybe next year there will be a little bit of a break. But like it is very impressive that Apple keeps improving the chips this much year over year, and hopefully they'll be able to keep doing that. I don't know how, but that's
I genuinely like, that's the thing, is every time they come out with something that's so ludicrously powerful, I'm going, okay, surely this is the super cycle year where they do, they pull out all the stops and they give us a crazy gain, and then next year will be calmed down. I thought that, I mean, when the M2 came out and was pretty minor, I was like, okay, so then the M3 will be a bigger jump, and it was. So then I thought, okay, the M4 will be a smaller jump. But then it wasn't. The M4 was pretty big. And then again with the M5. So now I'm starting to think, look, 4 out of 5 of these generations have been bangers. And, the M2, I think, was just kind of they were just launching everything. So to me, it made sense that the M2 was more of a tweak. But they haven't done another tweak chip. They literally the M2 was basically the exact same cores as the M1, but clocked up higher. They have not done that again. Like they have significantly altered the architecture every single year in some form or another. And honestly, the GPU stuff is the most impressive. That is just some insane type shit. In the Geekbench AI GPU test, the M5 was, depending on the run, either tied or slightly faster than the M4 Max.
Wow. That's like 1
what?
year. That's like that's very, I'm curious.
That's, by the way, that's the non-binned M4 Max. So that's a $4,000 computer if you want it in a MacBook. And the base M5 is the same speed when it comes to AI on the GPU. What?
I'm curious to see what the M5 Pro and Max, I guess if whether they do that or not. They probably will, right? Maybe not the Ultra, but like the Pro and the Max they'll probably do. So
yeah. I'm going to be interested to see if they do. My fear is that they're going to do what they did last year, and that is do the M4 Ultra and the M5 Max, because the problem there is if the Ultra chips fall behind, well, the regular chips are improving at this rate. That seems, it makes the Ultra chips a really bad deal, because I mean, we already found that the M4 Max is like kind of most of the way to the M3 Ultra. You're not really getting, like, obviously the scaling of putting two GPUs together is already taking a hit out of your performance. But then the fact that you're a generation behind in those chips, I mean, to me, it just seems like I would rather just buy a spec'd out Max chip and have the current architecture that's way, way less expensive. Put all that other money into some RAM because you can upgrade the storage on, Mac Studio. Like, yeah, I would just buy a Max chip. And the thing that's going to be really interesting, you mentioned, what are they going to do next year, right? Well, I don't know if you've seen, but next year, apparently, we're moving to 2 nanometer. So a process change.
I think I did hear about that. So that could be pretty huge.
Let me see what the production is. Apparently the I think this was like 5 days ago. The new 2 nanometer chip is about 50% more expensive. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if they pass that expense along or if they just kind of eat it. Because, I mean, frankly, it's not surprising that a new chip design would be more expensive, but I would imagine that it'll decrease in price as time goes on. So Apple might just eat it for the first, at least for the M6, the regular one, and then ramp up the production.
Yeah, I could almost see, if that ends up being the year that we get a hardware refresh, because we've been hearing about this and just like knowing how long the cycles typically last. Like, I almost wonder if there will be a price increase, and maybe part of that, or maybe even all of that price increase will come from the chip. Let's say part of it comes from the chip, but it's easier to swallow a price increase when the hardware looks different. So if they bring OLED or whatever, I don't remember what all the rumors were. There was like OLED, maybe they were going to make it a bit thinner because it is pretty thick right now. Whatever, maybe Face ID. I don't know if that was really a rumor or not, but like whatever they were going to do, if they have this new hardware plus the 2 nanometer chip, maybe that's the main difference. Maybe the chip itself isn't like that much faster, but they're just moving to the new architecture. They raise the price, for a year or two. It's like what they did with the MacBook Air, where it was like $1099 for a little while, and now it's back down to $999. Maybe the next generation MacBook Pro will go up in price a little bit, and it'll come back down eventually. I could sort of see them using that to justify the chip, and I feel like the timing could line up. So, maybe that's how they'll go about it.
Yeah, that's true. It would be. I wonder how much it would cost. Like, do you think they would add an extra like $100 or $200? It certainly seems likely that, because what is what they'll probably do is keep the M5 MacBook Pro, the base spec, will keep the current design. Which is why when I have been reviewing this laptop, I'm like, look, if you're not shopping for a Pro or Max, then I think you should go for it, because it's going to be at least a full year, if not 2, depending on how that goes. Because remember, the M1 Pro came out in November 2021, and then they did an M2 refresh the next year with the old design with the touch bar, and then the M3 is where they put it in the base. So it might take 2 years before this new design comes to the base model, right? So fair enough. Buy your M5 MacBook Pro. I don't have a problem with that. I will say, when the Pro and the Max chips come out, I'm going to be very, very reluctant to recommend buying them, because while I do think that the next generation will be a little bit more expensive, would be my guess, I think it's going to be worth it, because, your tandem OLED, probably thinner, probably better battery life, hopefully better battery life. Who even knows what else? I feel like they got to do more than just like thin plus OLED. because MacBook generations they last a long time. So I don't know. It's going to be super interesting to see.
Yeah, that's the other thing that, like, I'm thinking about getting a MacBook Air, and I'm like, oh, if they put the M5 in there, or when they do that, probably in like January, February, or whenever, I'm like, oh, that would be, pretty tempting. And the other rumor is that they're supposed to do 512 gigs of storage as the base, and that would be huge because I don't want 256 and I don't really want to pay $200 to upgrade it. So if the base is 512, I can deal with. My MacBook Pro that I have here is 1 terabyte. And honestly, I prefer a terabyte, but like I could deal with 512 and 16 gigs of memory for the MacBook Air and just get the base model. And that's probably what I would do. But then part of me is like,
why not just get a terabyte?
Maybe it's another $200 or whatever, but I guess I could.
Yeah, but the computer's not that expensive.
Yeah, but that's part of the reason why I like it, is the fact that it's not that expensive. Like I like that it's cheap, and I want it to be cheap.
Why?
Because I like cheap things. I don't know. Maybe.
I feel like you should just get the storage that you need.
Okay, the other thing is I have my family has like the 2 terabyte iCloud plan, and we have 1.1 terabytes of free storage in iCloud. And I honestly feel like if I took better advantage of that, because I have like a lot of the stuff on my computer could really go on my hard drive or in the cloud. I don't use it that much. So I kind of want to try, this is a whole other topic, but I do kind of want to try to clean up my computer a bit, put whatever I can in the cloud or in storage somewhere else, and then see how tenable 512 is. But we'll see. Maybe I would do 512. Maybe I would do a terabyte. The point is,
just do a terabyte. Who cares?
Yeah, maybe. But the thing is,
you're good for it.
Even then, even then, in January, February, if I were to buy it, and then I'm just thinking like, oh, next year they're probably going to do a refresh, and like maybe the MacBook Air will get a promotion display because the regular iPhone 17 got it this year, and like maybe it'll have thinner bezels, and I don't know, maybe it'll have another USB port, probably not, but like whatever it is, I just like I kind of want to get it when they refresh it, but then I'm like, do I just wait another year and then get the hardware refresh? So it's tough.
I feel like the hardware refresh for the MacBook Air is probably, I guess it's going to be spring 2027 at the earliest, right?
That's what I think.
Yeah, because if we're thinking the new generation will be next fall, which I think is reasonable. I wonder, by the way, if they're going to do a November Pro and Max chip release, or I think Gurman said it might be early in the year. That would be kind of weird, because if they do an M5, I'll tell you that if the M5 MacBook Pros come out in January or February, no way I'm going to tell you guys to buy those. Not a chance, because that's way too close. The MacBook Air, I think you're fine, because it's going to be at least, I guess it would be a little less than 2 years from now, but like still could be 2 years away. And then the MacBook Pro, the M5 MacBook Pro, is definitely going to keep its design for a little while. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to like make a good recommendation on that, especially because we don't know how fast the M6 is going to be, and we don't know what the price of the M6 MacBook Pro is going to be. But I always say, look, it almost always behooves you to wait, because it only gets cheaper the longer you wait. This is not like cars where you miss the market, right? And they get more expensive, or, appreciation is not a concern for Apple Silicon. Let me tell you that. If anything, the opposite. But I certainly will be extremely curious to see how these chips, how these chips advance, because especially in the case of like the M5, I wanted to bring in this comment that I saw from a few minutes ago. This person says, my first time tuning in, I use M2 as a developer. Would you say Apple Silicon right now is becoming a bit overkill unless you belong to that 1%, I guess you don't need that extra CPU power. And I think that's a great point. I touched on that in my video. At what point do you reach these diminishing returns where like your workflow, I don't know about you guys, but my workflow doesn't get more demanding at the rate that these chips are getting more powerful. Now, as a video editor, of course, I will always take faster render, faster export, more powerful GPU. I'll never question that. But for example, an M5 MacBook Air is probably going to outperform your M1 Max MacBook Pro. So that doesn't mean that you go buy an M4 Max. It means, oh, I can just save a bunch of money because my workflow isn't any different.
Yeah, exactly. So like I am looking forward to getting the M5 MacBook Air because I feel like I will have all the power, or maybe more power, or at least similar amount of power that I have right now, but in a much smaller and more portable form factor. And I think I'll really appreciate that because I travel a lot, and being able to take that small thing instead of this giant one will definitely be appreciated. So I'm looking forward to it. I also think one thing I wanted to comment on was the M5 MacBook Pro that just got announced. I always thought it was kind of weird when Apple announced. Do you remember which chip it was that they did the base chip in the MacBook Pro for the first time?
What, like when they in the new design MacBook Pro where they put the
Yeah,
base M? That was the
yeah,
M3.
the M3. So they did it for the M3. Did they do it for the M4?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, and then the M5. I always
Yeah.
found that kind of weird because I don't know how to put it, but it's almost like Apple saying that the Pro isn't really the chip, it's really the design, the hardware, right? Because like
Mm.
if you can get a MacBook Pro that doesn't have a Pro chip in it, what does that say about the Pro? I always found that would like to be a little bit weird. But I think it makes more sense now based on what we were just saying. And we were talking, Alex, our friend who was on the show a couple weeks ago, he also made this good point, which is if the current design of the MacBook Pro with the M5, if that sticks around for a bit, and then when the M6 Pro and M6 Max come out, and that's like the new design of the MacBook Pro, I think it makes a little bit more sense there, where you have the old design of the MacBook Pro with the base chip, and then the actual Pro chips get the new Pro design. I always just found it a little bit weird that you could
Mm.
get a MacBook Pro with a non-Pro chip in it, and I still find it a little bit weird, but I think if that's kind of where it ends up, that it's like the old design has the non-Pro chip, I think it at least makes a little more sense, or it's a little bit more clear of a division there. So I don't know, found that
Yeah.
kind of interesting.
No, that is true. It is a little bit. I guess, yeah, it's more like, I guess the way I see it is that you buy a MacBook Pro at multiple different tiers because of screen and hardware and then power. So like the first when you go from the MacBook Air to the MacBook Pro, you're upgrading to, okay, it's got a fan for cooling so we can run the same chip a little bit faster. It has more ports, better battery, and a nicer screen. And then you say, okay, more storage, more RAM, more power, and then the most storage, RAM, and power. So I kind of like it, to be honest. I like it better than when we had the Touch Bar M2 MacBook Pro alongside the M2 MacBook Air with a new design, but then the M2 Max and Pro MacBook Pros with the new design. It's obviously it's going to happen again. Like there's going to be that kind of awkward in between phase, but I don't know, man. I'm excited. This is when it comes to a lot of Apple's avenues, like the iPhone, the iPad, the Apple Watch, Vision Pro. There's a lot of reasons to be kind of like, things used to be more exciting. But when it comes to the Mac and the Apple Silicon team, they are absolutely crushing it. And so I'm always excited to see what they're working on for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great, M5 chip is great. I'm excited to see it come and be put into more products, especially the MacBook Air. I'm excited to see the Pro and Max. I'm excited to see the M6 with this 2 nanometer process and whatever that's going to be. And hopefully the devices it gets put in will also have like hardware redesigns. And I don't know, it just seems like a very exciting. Like right now, we're at a pretty exciting time. We just got something exciting, and there's a lot more to come. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing everything that Apple does in the next like year or two, and obviously beyond that. So good time. Good time to have a tech podcast, I guess, an Apple podcast.
I guess so. Especially a MacBook focused Apple podcast.
Yeah, very
Oh
specific.
God. Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, our very specific implication applies to the length of this week's episode on account of the incredible technical difficulties that we encountered. So sadly, we do have to leave it there. I think I'll be here next week.
Yeah.
Are you going anywhere?
Next week I should be here. Yeah.
Whoa. 2
Wow.
weeks in a row?
It's crazy.
Something's clearly gone wrong because that does not feel right.
Yeah, don't jinx it because you never know.
Yeah, that's true. Your microphone might just blow up next time. Who knows?
I would not be surprised. The Zoom might zoom on out of here.
That was a good one. I like
Whatever that means. And speaking of which, we are going to zoom on out of here because our time is up.
Whoa!
There, bringing it back.
Wow, there it is. Damn,
There
look
we
at that.
go.
He's a pro. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I have been your host, Luke Miani.
And I've been your host, Noah Rubin. We'll see you next time, hopefully next week, and have a great night.